Me too. Okay, so I'm here today to tell you a bit about DataKind, who we are, what we do, and then I'm going to talk about a particular case study. The agenda says I'm talking about Age UK Islington. Does anyone really want to know about our project with Age UK Islington? Interesting. So I'm actually not going to talk about Age UK Islington. We are still in the early phase of painfully scoping that project. So instead, I'm going to be talking about a project we ran with Citizens Advice, since that is a completed project, and I can talk about that with confidence. If anyone wants to know what we're doing at Age UK, come and chat to me at the end. We're helping them to predict who their most vulnerable clients are.
What is it?
What the project is? So Age UK Islington obviously support elderly people in Islington. They provide lots of different support services to them, and they want to better understand who their most vulnerable clients are so they can more proactively reach out to them as opposed to waiting until they contact them when things have got too bad. Is, in theory, what the project is. We're still slightly in the weeds around that. Anyways, so I was going to talk about a different case. So before I get too involved in what we did with Citizens Advice, I was going to tell you a bit about DataKind. So DataKind was started in New York about 4 years ago. Our fearless leader is called Jake Porway. He was a data scientist working in R&D at the New York Times. And he kept going to hackathons with these brilliant individuals, you know, with mass PhDs who'd give up their whole weekend and at the end produce like an app to park your car. And he was just so frustrated with how crap the outputs were from these kinds of events. And he started chatting to some of his mates who were all data scientists. And they thought, well, let's try and do our own version of this. So they ran a hackathon-style event, got some local nonprofits in New York to come along, and weren't even sure if any data scientists were going to turn up, and over 100 turned up. And they suddenly were like, wow, I think we've tapped into something. So Jake ran it on a voluntary basis for about a year while doing his day job, and then realized this is like bigger than I can handle, quit his job, set up DataKind. DataKind now exists in 6 countries around the world. And we are the UK chapter, so we started about 2 years ago. So the idea is that so far data science is a fairly kind of niche expertise that is highly in demand in the private sector. I actually think of it a bit as in the same like legal expertise, the way that law has developed a pro bono like ethos and a pro bono aspect, and not everyone can access expensive legal expertise, and there are now ways to provide those. That's kind of what DataKind is trying to foster within the data science community, is getting people with this particular expertise, with serious data skills, to donate them for good. Because we have a lot of NGOs and charities who are tackling very tough social issues and have deep expertise in these social issues, but do not understand data, do not understand the power of data, but because of funding, have very carefully been recording everyone they have been helping for decades. So they often have databases full of this really rich, fantastic data that no one is looking at, which is where DataKind steps in. So we run different kinds of projects, some very event-based, some longer-term projects where we work with different charities to undertake data science projects. Our long-term goal is not that every charity needs to work with DataKind. Our long-term goal is that every charity needs to understand what they can do with their data and understand when they need to bring in someone who understands data, and that potentially they have internal data analysts, or they at least turn to a data scientist. So just a lot of awareness raising going on in general. And so we were approached last year by Citizens Advice, who are a large charity. They were actually started in the First World War. So this is a picture of what Citizens Advice used to be. It was out of an old army truck. And people needed help with like their ration booklets or whatever it would be. They'd go along to Citizens Advice. It's now massive. So Citizens Advice helped about 2 million people last year. So this is actually 1.8 million people. But that's a lot of people in the UK who went to Citizens Advice for help with all kinds of issues. So obviously Citizens Advice provides support on immigration and housing and benefits and employment and a whole host of things. To give you an idea of the kinds of support they provide, they have over 3,800 physical offices, which someone's told me is more shopfronts than Tesco's in this country. They have a consumer advice service, so you can phone up You can email, you can ask questions, get support that way. And they also have a website providing lots of information, which for our purposes means they were collecting a hell of a lot of data. The data was in 3 key places, obviously not joined up, because why would it be joined up? So we had Bureau statistics data, right? And this is really rich data, and every single person who goes into Citizens Advice or asks for help gets put into their system, and it gets tagged on 3 tiers. So you have someone comes in, is an issue related to benefits, and then it's narrows down to income support, and then it narrows down to like appeals or changes of circumstance or whatever. So they have like this really granular tracking of people's issues in the UK. So all around the country, they can tell you the most serious issues that people are facing, and that in this one part of the country, this kind of benefit is like a bigger issue than over here. Or if the government changes a policy, they see the ripple effects quite quickly within their bureau. So it's really interesting data. They also had lots of text data, which every time someone in their offices wants to flag an issue, they fill in a form as like a, hey, warning, we see this as an issue, can someone pay attention to it? So lots of text data, never been looked at it. They'd never looked at it at all. They then had all the web analytics of what people are doing on their website, of this advice guide, which gets like millions and millions of hits every month. So they came to us because they realized that they had been rather slow to realize the scale of the payday loans problem in this country. It was all in the data, but the data wasn't joined up. So they anecdotally started hearing payday loans were an issue, but they had no concept of the scale until about 9 months into the whole affair. And this for them was kind of a massive warning sign. It was like, uh-oh, we are not shaped to respond to these small emerging issues. How do we spot these issues sooner? And so they approached us and said, we have lots of data. Could data science help us spot or even predict new emerging social issues? And then potentially Citizens Advice could respond sooner and stop problems escalating. We were thrilled because we were like, wow, a charity's come to us with what sounds like a coherent data science project. This is the first time ever. So we put together a little project outline. We went to Nesta. We got some funding. And we spent about a year working with them. So the aim of the project was twofold. One was to create some kind of prototype so Citizens Advice could use their data to identify these issues. The other one was a bit more general, just trying to make their staff aware of how to use data. So they have a 5 or 6 person information management team that's very good at producing reports. So we thought maybe we could get them doing something a bit whizzier. And we also were really sneaky. We didn't tell them at the time, but we wanted to get Citizens Advice opening up this data. Because from what we can see, it's really rich key data that people should be able to access, and they sit on it and very closely protect it. So in true DataKind style, we kicked off the project. We got loads of data scientists together. We threw them in a room with lots of pizza, and we just had a bit of what we call a data dive, and got everyone exploring the data. We just wanted to get a sense of what was in it, right? And we actually ended up running 2 of these events. So when I say data dive, I'm actually being a bit flippant. So unlike a hackathon, a data dive does happen on a weekend, but it's basically a 3-month project. So we'll take 3 or 4 charities. They will come to us with an idea. We then give them 3 volunteer data scientists who spend 2 months beforehand working with the charity to clean the data, to anonymize it, to prep it all, to get it into a good state so that we come to the event and we know what we're doing. And we don't expect to produce an app. All we're selling it as is exploratory analysis. Like, bring along that database of every beneficiary you've ever helped, and we will help you find new patterns and trends in it, and we will hopefully inspire you, and it will act as a bit of a catalyst for your organization, is the general idea of what we do at data dives. So in this case, we ran 1 data dive, got our heads around what was in all this data, pulled out some really interesting kind of new ideas and insights for them, but mainly it was just so we could begin the project. We then started matching up these 3 data sets. That actually took bloody ages, but yeah, we brought all 3 data sets together. They were all matched up according to each issue that different people faced, and so you could start to see who was using what channel to report about what. So we found that people asked about issues related to debt in person, never over the phone and not really on the website. So that was an issue people wanted to talk about face-to-face. On the website, interestingly, it was really absurd things like something related to duty-free and gin was like by far the most popular search item. But anyways, the point was, as we were going through this data dive process, throwing data around, playing with it, we had it all in Elasticsearch because it was a mix of text data. That seemed a sensible place to throw it all. Someone at one of these events pulled up Kibana. And again, just threw it all together, having a little play. And some of the Citizens Advice Bureau staff saw this and went, hold up, what's happening here? Like, talk me through this. And it was the first time they'd ever seen all 3 data sets and been able to start comparing them and being able to see how issues changed across channels. And they had their minds blown. And it was at that point we realized that maybe they didn't really need a predictive model. Maybe they actually just needed a way to understand their data in real time. So the project changed a bit when we realized really how fundamental the needs were. And so a group of about 8 data science volunteers worked with Citizens Advice for 6 months and produced this prototype. And it's a prototype dashboard. This was the new version of Kibana. It's very sexy. And the idea was that it is still, I don't think, really implemented in Citizens Advice, but anyways, the idea is it could show you the top issues at any time. You could drill down. So what was happening with Payday loans, for example, was that people were coming to them and it was being tagged as debt and then just being thrown into other because it wasn't, something they already knew about. So this is a way that people could start drilling down into explicitly and go into that other category and see what was happening and see if some part of the country suddenly any of the other categories was suddenly greater than usual. The dashboard did a lot of natural language processing work around spotting new emerging issues. So we had uncommonly common terms appearing. For example, like 0 hours contracts started to appear a few months ago much more frequently than it ever had done before. So the whole thing gave Citizens Advice for the first time a way to play with this data and to slice it and dice it, and as they never had before. We also did something quite interesting using D3 to show the connections between issues. So a third of people coming in to ask Citizens Advice for help are repeat clients. So we thought, hold on, if someone comes in to ask about issue A, what's the probability they'll come back with issue B? And can we give them advice, preventative advice earlier to stop that happening? So this shows issues and the connections, and there's actually, the arrows are related to time, you can change based on frequency, so they come out within 6 months or a year or 2 years. And again, this blew the Citizens Advice staff's minds. They didn't even know this kind of thing was possible. The joy on their face when they were left to play with that. So that was really popular. We didn't manage to integrate it into the version of Kibana. This was back in January when Kibana couldn't support that. So that was a kind of this flavor of some of the things we did with them. So what? Some of the interesting things that when they were playing around with this, they started seeing were massive problems around fuel and utilities payments that they'd never spotted before in the data. There was also a lot appearing around depression and mental health issues related to debt. So they started running their own, what they call internal data dives once a month, where the information team comes together and they get different departments and teams to come and sit with them and play in the data and find out what they're concerned about and sit next to them and explore it, which has been fantastic. I would say the thing that I think came out of this is organizational change, is that we got them using new tools. We got everyone very excited about data. We were dealing with whole stratas throughout the organization and bringing them together for workshops. And we got them opening up their data. So we had Citizens Advice shared their data with St Mungo's Broadway, who are a homelessness charity. They actually linked it up on an individual level. So we could track people who were going to Citizens Advice for help and were then appearing in St Mungo's systems because they were homeless. So we were looking at what were they approaching Citizens Advice for help with first. And the answer was appeals to employment support allowance, actually, interestingly. So we've kind of changed, I think we've changed Citizens Advice mindset. They are a rather large and bureaucratic organization, so the idea that they're going to implement this dashboard across the whole organization is yet to be seen. I don't have high hopes. But anyways, that's like a bit of an example of what we do. In case any of you are asking how you could get involved with this, even if you're not, data scientists, we do a lot of projects that don't involve the really whizzy end of data science and don't involve machine learning and text analysis and whatever. We do a lot more basic kinds of data analysis work. We actually have an event coming up in Bristol, which I'll tell you about in a bit, if you want to get involved. I'm not sure what's coming next after this, actually. Oh, just to give you a quick rundown of the tools that we use in this project. They're all open source. I'm not a techie, so I actually can't answer questions on these, so please don't ask too complicated questions about any of this. I can find out for you if you have questions. And the event that's coming up in Bristol is going to be at the Engine Shed, and it's the first weekend in December. We're running it with Which, the consumer group. We have Alzheimer's Society getting involved. It's focusing on issues related to the elderly. And the idea is there'll be 3 or 4 charity projects, and you come along and pitch in however you can, basically. It's free for the charities to get involved. It's free for you to get involved. All we ask is that you bring your tech and data skills and an open mind. And there's the sign up as well at that bit.ly link to an Eventbrite page. So yeah, thank you.